Hi, you guys. You're coming in. I think it's muting you automatically. We're going to use the chat today for conversation. Depending on how big the group is, we might unmute. We'll just kind of see. And you might be hearing quiet. That's okay. Don't worry. I'm here. We're going to start the session at 2 o'clock. So we're just kind of hanging tight until everybody else gets here. We have about 1 more minute until our 2 o'clock hour, so you can just hang tight. Our session today is being recorded. You are welcome to either watch or watch my screen and just kind of learn, ask questions, things like that. Or if you want to have your own Google Forms tab open and kind of step through things, whatever makes the most sense for you. Hey guys, those of you that just came in, welcome. It is right at the 2 o'clock hour. I'm going to give it like a minute or two more. I have everybody muted and there are several of us, so I think we're going to use the chat today to kind of help facilitate those questions. But we'll kind of talk about norms once we get started. We have about maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. We'll see if anybody else is going to join us. Ms. Hart asked a question about this session being offered Google Forms tips and tricks. The one next week is being offered by Anna Sexton, which is another one of the coaches. So I haven't seen her session, but both she and I in these sessions are covering kind of the basic pieces. So I would say very similar. We have had some requests for maybe like a more advanced session in Google Forms. So that's definitely on our radar. All right, it is 2:01. I think we'll kind of get started. If we have anybody else join us, we'll just kind of welcome them in. And I'm glad that you're here. Like I mentioned earlier, if you didn't hear, I am recording today's live webinar session. And at the very end of our time together, I don't think it's going to take us an hour. I think we're probably looking at closer to 30 minutes or so, but we'll see. Don't hold me to it. After the session, or at the end of this session, sorry, I will post a link to a Google form that will be our attendance sheet for today. So that is how we're going to take care of attendance. If you have any questions as we're going through things, feel free to drop those in the chat, and I will do my best to kind of periodically check in and try to answer those questions as we go, if at all possible. So I'm excited you're here. If I'm not your coach, I'm excited you're here. My name is Janet Weininghoff. I am a middle school academic technology coach, and I work with Bernal, Briscoe, Rawlinson, Ross, and Rudder. But I know that there are people from all over the place. Every campus has a coach. So if you see something today and you're like, oh, I'm going to need some more help with that, or I want to know more about that, reach out to your coach afterwards. You know, we're here to support you guys, and we want to help you be good integrators. So today we are going to dive into Google Forms, and I'm going to start out in my Drive. But here in a little bit, I'll also show you how you can create a form starting out in Google Classroom. But for right now, we're going to start in Drive. And I like starting in Drive because I know where my form lives, and I can also make sure that when I create the spreadsheet that collects all my responses, they live in the same place and I kind of know where they're housed, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. But that's why I'm starting here in Drive. So whether you're accessing the Google form from Drive or you're creating it directly from Classroom, you are ending up in the same product. So everything I show you, it applies all the way around. So in my Drive, where I want my form to live, I'm going to hit New, More, and the very first thing that's going to pop out is that Google form. And so I'm going to let that open up. Google Forms always opens in this kind of purple themed format, if you will. If you want to change that, which you can at any time, you're going to notice that there are some additional features up here in the top right corner of my screen. Just one second. Oh, good. Sorry, I'm admitting somebody. Hey, Katie, we're just getting started. So I'm glad you're here. We're all on mute. And if you have any questions, you can just drop those in the chat. Today's session is being recorded, and I'll email that out to everybody on the back end. So again, we're in Google Forms. If you want to change that kind of standard appearance or that purple theme, you're going to notice there is an art wheel up here in the top right corner of my screen. And if I click that, I'm going to see these different options. Now I can just change up the color theme if I want to, or I can choose an image, and they have a lot of images here that you can choose from. There are different kind of themes, if you will. And if I insert that, it will create a banner up at the top, and then it will change kind of the color theme that is happening. You'll also notice there is an option under Choose Image to upload your own or to browse the photos that are housed in your Drive. So let's say I'm going to pick these really nice paintbrushes. Cool, I like this. And I can also choose from these colors here that are on kind of the color palette for this form, and I can change anything up if I want to. Again, these are just aesthetics, totally optional. Kind of keeping in the theme up here in the top right corner of your screen, to the right of the color wheel, you're going to see that eyeball. You can click that at any point in time, and it's going to give you a live preview of your form. So if you plug in a question or a video, which we'll talk about here in just a second, and you're wondering what does that look like, you can just hit the little eyeball and it will pop right open, and you'll see the live view of your form. The last thing here is the settings cog wheel, which is super important. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. So general settings, you're going to notice that restrict to users in Northside is always checked. That's defaulted on. What is not defaulted on is collect email addresses. So if you are sending out a Google form, maybe to your parents or people in the community trying to gather some information, you may decide that you want to turn that restrict to Northside users off. If you are collecting information from your kiddos, you want to turn on the collect email addresses so that it kind of names their response, names their paper, if you will. And so you know who is submitting what answer. And we'll look at that on the back end. I have a form with some answers in it, and we'll kind of see what that looks like. Response receipts, this is optional. If I turn it on, I can either always send the respondent a copy of their responses, or if they request it. Now, this does not work for our kids because it comes from a no reply email address. And so our kiddos can't receive emails from outside places. However, if you are using this with parents or community members, you can turn that on. Limit to one response, just the way that it sounds. If you want it to be limited to just, they can complete it one time, you can turn that on. If you want them to be able to edit their form after they submit, you can check here. If you want them to be able to see a summary chart and text responses, so kind of like a pie graph of how other people have answered, you can check that. Again, these are all just personal preference pieces, but always make sure that you come here to collect email addresses, especially if you're working with kids. The next tab over, it says presentation. So a couple of options here. I can show a progress bar at the bottom of my screen. So this is really helpful if you have several questions. It will put like a tracker bar, like you're 50% complete at the bottom of the screen. Just a good pacing thing for the kids. Shuffle question order, that's optional. If we were in face-to-face school, you might find like a whole lot of value in that one. Otherwise, in this distance learning situation, kids aren't really going to be sitting next to each other, things like that. But again, that's where it lives. The last one is show link to submit another response. If you want that to be turned on, you can, or you can turn that off. And then the last thing here is your confirmation message. The default is your response has been recorded. However, you can make this custom. So don't forget, we have a live class meeting tomorrow at noon. See link in Google Classroom. So when your kiddos submit that form, that confirmation message is what they will see. So that can be really useful if you need to kind of reinforce information. The last option here is the quizzes button. So I can make this a quiz just by clicking this little toggle here on the screen. You're going to notice that there is now this option that says locked mode on Chromebooks. If we were in face-to-face school and you had a Chromebook cart, you might want to turn this on, because when the kiddo opens up the form, they can't navigate anywhere else, but they have to be on a Chromebook. So because our kiddos are accessing materials from all kinds of devices, iPads, phones, desktop computers, Macs, we don't want to turn that on right now. The next option down, release the grade. Your choice is immediately or later, and if it's later, then you can manually submit it or send it to them. You can let them see their missed questions, you can let them see the correct answers, and you can let them see the point value, or you can uncheck those. Again, a lot of these things are just personal preference. So I saw a question pop up in the chat. Oh, sorry. I don't know if that just adjusted your screen. My apologies if it did. I'm going to open up the chat real quick and see what our question was. Okay. Katie says, sometimes when you complete a form by your email address, you can't go back and redo. because it will tell you that you have already completed it. Yes. Which option would allow them to redo an assignment if needed? Katie, my thought is if you're underneath general and you click probably this edit after submit, that is probably going to allow them to come back and make changes to that. So I would say test that out with maybe a student or two that you know is pretty savvy and see if that remedies that situation for you. Amy says, do we need to save on each tab, general and quizzes? No, you can just make all of your changes and then you can just hit the save one time and it is going to save it and it's going to save all. Okay, so we're back here on the main screen of our questions. Uh-oh, I think one more thing popped up in the chat. I'm just going to double check. Okay, Belle says, what does a limit to one response do if you uncheck it? In theory, that should mean that they can click the link again and redo the form again. I know Katie mentioned that sometimes that can be a little glitchy. And so I think if I check the make changes button, it will probably remedy that. So, okay, so we're back here on the, sorry. I'm gonna come back to the chat one more time. You guys are awesome. Okay, we're good. All right, so I'm back here on my main screen. I've looked at all of kind of my settings, if I will. We are gonna talk about the send button. We are gonna talk about the 3 buttons, but we're gonna build out some questions first. So my form starts out untitled. And if I type a title here, let's say sample quiz. Oh, there's a little lag on my keyboard. And then I come to the left corner up here and I just click it. It will automatically transfer that name over. Form description, this is any kind of general detailed information you want the kids to know before starting your quiz. Don't forget to use your math chart as needed. Okay. So then I'm gonna hop to my first question. And so you're gonna notice I have this toolbar kind of hovering out here on the right-hand side of my screen. This is how I continue to add things to the form. So I'm gonna start with my first question here. And I'm going to say, which class period are you in? So I strongly recommend that if you are using the same form with multiple class periods, that you start every form with this question right here, and that you make it either a multiple choice or a drop down. If you leave it as a short answer, then kids will write 1. They might write first, F-I-R-S-T. They might write 1 ST, 1 ST period. And so when you start to get all of those different responses and you sort your form, it's going to sort all those things differently. So for consistency, I really like the idea. And again, you can make it a multiple choice, or if you click the question type drop down right here, you're going to see all of the options for question types in Google Forms. Now, you do have a short answer option. This will give them kind of a small text line. However, there is not a character limit on that. If they have a longer response, they'll be able to type it there. It's just going to be in a running single line. Below that, you have paragraph. This is going to give them kind of that larger box that they can type inside of. Multiple choice, pretty self-explanatory. You can add as many or as few options as you want. It doesn't have to be 4. It could also be a true false if you just have 2. Below that, you have check boxes. This can be used if you want the kids to check multiple things. So if there's not just one response, and so we'll look at that in just a second. Drop down. So I'm going to turn that on for our question here in just a second. This takes that multiple choice button and it just turns it into a single drop down. This is super useful if you have a lot of options. it will keep the question from looking so large. Kind of other things here, I can make a linear scale on a scale of 1 to 5. How are you feeling today? 1 being I'm really tired, 5 being I have a lot of energy. That's my linear scale. I can do some grids. I can also enter a date and a time. Again, these are just kind of all of the more advanced options. You're probably going to find yourself living kind of right up in here. So I'm going to make this a drop down. And so I want to show you what that looks like in the live form. So remember, to see the live form at any time, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click the little eyeball. And which class period are you in? And I'm going to say second. And so remember, I've turned on my little completion bar. I've answered the one and only question, so it's at 100%, but this is what it looks like for when you have that turned on. I'm not going to submit it right now. I'm actually going to close that and I'm going to jump back into my form. So when I'm ready to add another question, I'm going to come to this little toolbar that's hanging out here in the right-hand margin, and I'm going to say I want to add a question. And so you're going to notice it populated here. So let's say, how is your energy level today? And it automatically gauged based on my text that it was a linear scale. And so it will do that often. It will kind of best guess what kind of question you're asking. If it misses the mark, you can always hit that little drop down and you can always change the question type. I can also say, is it 1 to 5? Is it 1 to 10? Is it 1 to 7? Totally up to you. Let's say I am tired. I have a lot of energy. And so that becomes my linear scale question. Some other options that you're going to notice here that I have, I can always copy a question, so duplicate it. I can always trash a question. So let's say I've built out 7 or 8 questions and I'm like, I don't really need question number 2 anymore. I can just come to the trash can button and I can delete it. I can make this a required question, meaning they have to answer it. And then I can also click my 3 dots and I can do like a little description if I need to. So I really like that required button. It can be super helpful in kind of forcing their hand and making sure that they are answering those questions. All right, so let's take a live look at this. I'm gonna come up here, remember to that eyeball again. And so I have my drop down. Oh, I need to reorder that because I want that class period up at the top. And then again, this is what the little scale looks like. So let's say 4, I have a lot of energy, and then I can click submit. But I'm gonna close it because I'm not gonna answer it yet. All right, so if I want to keep adding questions, I can just hit the add button. However, if you're going to have several questions, this scroll on the form will start to get really long. So if you're like, I want them to see maybe 3 questions on the screen at a time and then like a little page break. You can actually do that by hitting the add section. It looks like the really thick equal sign here at the bottom of this little toolbar. So both of those first 2 questions, they were kind of like housekeeping questions, right? So maybe this is going to be like my pre-assess section. So this is going to be, maybe 1 or 2 questions, just kind of testing their knowledge. And when I want to add a question, remember I'm going to hit that little plus button, add a question. And then I can start typing. Tell me everything you remember about area and volume. So again, I can either choose paragraph or I could choose short answer. Let me show you what it looks like on both sides of that. So let me go to the live view, and this is going to be of the paragraph version. So I'm going to choose my class period. I am going to choose my energy level and I'm going to hit next. So I can just start typing here. And again, it's not going to give me a character limit. It is going to let me just type. And so they can type all of their responses or how much ever they know here. Sorry. There we go. They can also hit enter and they can just keep going. All right, so I'm going to jump off of the preview screen. I'm going to leave it. And so again, if you wanted to change that, maybe you just want 1 or 2 answers, you would hit short answer. Good to know, right? Okay, let's say I'm going to add another section. And this section is going to be intro to area and volume. So I've created a new section, and maybe this is where like the meat and potatoes of the learning is going to live. So I have some options here. I can import questions from another Google form. So that is like a little bit misleading because I know a lot of times we have like question banks that might live in like ExamView or something like that. The import questions means you can bring in a question from another Google form and that's about it. I can add another text box here. And so that can happen anywhere really. If you need to just put some clarifying instructions, you can do that. I can bring in an image. So let's say I can upload it if it's saved to my computer. I can, if I've taken a picture from a camera roll and I've saved it to my computer, if I have the URL, the photos, if it's a document in Drive, or I could even do like a Google image search. So let's see, area formula. Probably not what I need. And so I probably want to bring something over that I have. I can snip if I have it in a PDF and I could download that to my computer and upload it into the form. If you need help with that, I don't think we're going to dive too deep into it today, but you can always reach out to your coach on that. So I'm going to say for good measure that I did like that image. And so I'm going to say, example of the area formula. And then maybe I want to add a video. So I'm going to click that video button. This is pulling a video from YouTube. And that is kind of my limit. I cannot have the video living in Drive and link it up right here. It actually has to live in YouTube. If you're like, oh, I have some videos that I've made, maybe screencasting, maybe you have made them in Explain Everything or Loom or wherever you have made them, you can upload those into YouTube. And then you would be able to bring those over and paste them right in here. And again, if you need help getting set up in a teacher YouTube channel, maybe we'll have a live learning session on that because I think there's a lot of value in it. If not, you can always reach out to your coach and they can help you. And we do have teacher YouTube channels. YouTube is a Google product and it is part of our G Suite apps. So if you've never played around with your teacher YouTube channel, if you're in your email or in your Drive and there is that little gray waffle app launcher in the top right corner, if you click on that and you'll actually see YouTube in there, that will take you to your teacher YouTube channel. So let's say I am just looking maybe for a pre-done video. And so I will say word of caution on some of the pre-done stuff. Less is more in terms of length of video. So my general rule of thumb is 1 minute in length of video per grade level that the student is in. If it's a 6th grader, I'm not going to post anything longer than 6 minutes because they're not going to watch it. And I'll be real honest, and I don't know about you guys, if I'm YouTubing something like searching for it, like a how-to video, and I see a 15-minute video, I am probably not going to watch it. So I'm going to look for that really 2 or 3 minute meat and potatoes. Does Screencastify allow you to download to YouTube? It actually does, Belle. You can send that right over from the Screencastify folder, and I can show you a little how-to on that. Sorry, I'm going to respond to one question. All right, so let's say for good measure, this is a short video, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to import it into my form here. And then I might, after I have the video there, I might have just a couple of check for understanding questions. Which is the correct formula for calc area, and then I might have A equals, sorry, I know it's on the video, but area equals length times width, and I might do area equals length plus width. So you get the gist there. If I want to make a correct or incorrect answer, I can now click this little answer key button. And then you're going to notice I can choose a correct answer, and it will highlight it in green. I will need to tell it how many points this question is worth. Let's say it's worth 10 points. And then I have the option to add answer feedback. And so I can choose feedback for either incorrect or correct answers. And so I might say, remember the formula is A equals length times width. Okay, I can also send a supplemental link here. I can also add a supplemental video there. I'm going to hit save. And remember, only the kiddos that got that question incorrect will see that based on how I set that up. So maybe I'm going to have another quick check for understanding. Maybe we're going to talk about volume. Or maybe I'm just going to kind of check and see where they are. How comfortable are you calculating volume after watching the video? And again, you could say, I need a lot of help. I could teach others. And so again, it'll know that it is a linear scale question. Okay, I saw something pop up in the chat. I'm going to jump over. Can the questions ever be turned to number to track data? So I'm thinking maybe, Amy, you're asking about data validation, like if they type in a specific number and it will say yay or nay and it won't let them move on until they pick that?
No, I mean like question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, so that do we, on the other end, when they submit their responses, do we see what number they got right or wrong?
Sure. So what I would do for that is it doesn't automatically number for you. Let me hit done there. And so you would actually need to type in like the number indicator yourself, and then we'll look at what it looks like on the back end.
Thank you.
So it doesn't, sure, no problem. It doesn't do it for you. You would have to do it. Okay, so let's add one more section. And I might say, you know, this is maybe the practice section where I might start to add some problems that I just want them to kind of get some practice on. So maybe I would give them some equations, or if I have some images of some things I would want to bring in, I would click that add button where it's add image. And remember, I can upload those. if I have it like in a PDF, or it comes, maybe I have something from the distance learning resources that your specialist or that your ISD have put together. And this is true for social studies. It might be a map or a timeline. It could be a political cartoon. You can bring in anything that you have downloaded. Can I read and record a question or an article that has been uploaded in a form? You can, Ms. Hart, but it would just require you to do that somewhere else, if that makes sense. So once I have my form built out, I would come to live view, and I would probably screencast myself recording those questions. But your kids will have to toggle. It's not live. Like, they'll watch you reading the questions, and then they would need to be in their own form. I hope that makes sense. If you're wondering about just like text to speech options, there are some add-ons. So if you have some questions about that, maybe we can chat on the back end. Okay, so I'm going to add a question here. What is the area of the image? And if I want to attach the image to the question, I would click the image button inside the question. And, you know, maybe I can upload it, or maybe I can image search it. Area of a triangle. Oh, sorry. If you spell it right, it does help. Okay, so let's say I'm going to use that for argument's sake. And I'm going to have them do a short answer because I just want them to give me the calculation. And if I click this, I now have the option to response validation. And if I choose that option, sorry guys, I hope you don't hear my kiddos yelling. They have a tournament going upstairs. They're playing the Switch. Okay, so I'm adding this here, and let's say I want them to give me a specific number or text that is greater than, or maybe it is equal to. I have a lot of options. So if there's a range, you can use these tools. I can say it is a number, and so maybe my number is 64. It is not going to let them move on from that question until they enter the right thing in data validation. So if I make that required, they're not going to be able to advance unless they can plug that in. I know that breakouts and digital breakouts was a huge thing. I know a lot of people are still using that. They use that response validation option to keep kids from advancing until they have that one correct answer. Again, we're looking at things kind of broad and general today. If you want help with specifics on any of those things, please reach out to your coach. We definitely want to support you on that. Okay, so I want to show you, we've built a lot of stuff. So I want to show you what our form looks like now in the live preview using that eyeball in the top right corner. So I'm saying my class period, and I'm saying my energy level is good today. Next. Pre-assessment, so everything. Now, I didn't require this question, so the kiddo, maybe they don't know anything. It would be an option for them to leave it blank if I don't require the response. Okay, so I have my question there. I have my video there. They can watch it. They can just push play from right here, and it's going to like play a small version of that, right? Or they can hit that little full screen button and we'll take them full screen out. Again, I can answer those questions. I'm going to say next. I would type my 64, and then I would hit my submit button. And again, I can view my score right here live if I want to, because I did have that one question that I marked correct and correct, and it's going to tell me how I did. Pretty cool. All right, so let's say on the teacher end, what are those responses? What do I see? So I'm going to jump over here, and I'm back in my original Google form. And you're going to notice up here in kind of the center top, there are two options here, questions and responses. So if I come here to responses, I can view the responses right inside the form if I want to. And I have the option that I can see a summary. I can see question by question, how did they answer? Or I can click individual and I can just hit the drop down and I would see every kiddo's name that responded. I could click on their name and then I can scroll through and I can see exactly how they answered. Now, depending on how you like to look at your data, you can also tell this to send out to a spreadsheet. So I'm going to click create spreadsheet. And I am going to create a new spreadsheet. And it is going to land here. So I know, Amy, you had mentioned, how do I know what the response is to which question? Here in the spreadsheet view, this first row, this is everything from the Google form. And I always like to come up here to the text wrapping and hit that little center so that I can see everything at one time. And then you're gonna see it is time and date stamped. Remember earlier I mentioned I wanna collect those email addresses. That's so it will populate here in this column B, and I will know who answered what class period are you in. I can use that and I can hit the little drop down and I can sort that A to Z, and then it will sort my kids by class period. And then for each question, I see the responses, and they will just go down the column. If I have turned on any kind of scoring or use that answer key, I will see that score here. So it just depends on how you set this up. I had one question for 10 points. So the respondent got 10 points of 10 points. If I had, 10 questions, each worth 10 points, and they got 9 questions correct, then I would see a 90 of 100. So I hope that makes sense. It's pretty easy to look at. So two kind of last things before we open it up into questions. The first is up here, I'm back in my form. I am on the responses tab, but I can always toggle back over to questions. And then I'm gonna click the purple send button in the top area. Now I can email this out, which can be super helpful if you're needing to send this to parents or community. Or you can always grab the link and you can post that in your Google Classroom. So I am going to either type email addresses here. I can include the form in the email. I don't really love the way that looks. They see the form, they answer all the responses, and then when they hit submit, it takes them out to the form again. So I don't usually ever turn that on. So up here in next to the envelope, just to the right, there is a link button. So I can copy this link. That one's really long. I can shorten it a little bit if I want to. That's personal preference. And then if I want to paste or grab this to post it in Google Classroom, I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to come to Google Classroom. And I am going to head to the classroom where I know I want to post it. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to post it as classwork because this is something I want my kiddos to complete and turn in to me. I'm going to say it is just an assignment. Complete this week's quiz. I'm going to add a link, and now I am going to paste that link. Add it. It's going to think for just a second. It's ready to go. your students, depending on what device they're on, they may be prompted to sign in, or they may just push right through. Over here, you're going to have all of your good options for classroom. You can post this to multiple class periods if you want to, or, because it's an either or, if you need to assign things to just specific students and you have just one class period selection, you will have the option to just assign it. Maybe this is just going to Elizabeth and it's just going to Catherine. I might give it a due date, totally optional. I always want to associate everything to a topic. If you're not already using topics, and if your topics aren't already by week, I would strongly encourage it. And if you want to chat about this afterwards, I would love to. And I'm going to hit assign. And so it is, if I scroll down and I go to my week, here is complete this week's quiz. And if I click on that, it works just like it always does. So I mentioned earlier in the session today that I started out in my Google Drive. I don't necessarily have to start there. That is probably just a personal preference piece for me. I can come to the create button and I can select quiz assignment. And then it's automatically going to generate the little form for me, and I can open it up. And again, this is starting right where I started in our session today. I just like the idea of making it live in a specific folder, making sure that I know where the spreadsheet is living. Again, personal preference, 100%. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about, I'm back here in my quiz. So you're going to notice there are the, as always, 3 dots in the top right corner of the screen. And I'm going to have some options here. I can make a copy, so I can duplicate this form. Okay. I can also add collaborators. Now, if you add a collaborator, if you add another teacher to this, it is not giving them their unique copy of this form. It is adding them as a teacher to the form that you have. So if you build a form and you want to share it with the rest of your grade level or your PLC, you'll want to actually check the make a copy option and make a copy for them. I think that's it. That's like pretty fast and furious, right? So 44 minutes, I think we were in. I'm going to kind of turn over to the chat right now. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to. And we can take some questions if you want to. And I'm also, while that's happening, going to post the link for our attendance today. I'm going to put this link in the chat. If it doesn't automatically hyperlink for you, you can copy that link and paste it in your web browser, and you should see that link. Any questions that I can answer for you guys? And remember, I recorded today's session, so I know that this felt like kind of fast and furious, and you might be feeling, yes, I feel so solid on this right now. And when you go in and you start really working on this, you might be like, oh, what was that again? That's what that recording is there for. And so I hope that you will utilize that. Any other questions I can answer for you guys? If you need help also accessing that form, you can just drop your question in the chat.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you start out in Google Classroom to create the quiz and it's made, where does it, like in the netherworld, where does it land?
Where does it land? Let me show you. Super good. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen with you guys. And then, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so you're going to notice that I'm going to go back to classwork. and I never really did anything with this. It's still kind of living. Here is that form. And you're going to notice right up here, a little folder is going to populate next to the quiz title. It's going to think about it for a second. So it's right there. And if I click on folder, I can back out of Google Classroom. In the background has a very elaborate folder system that it builds. It stores tons of things, all the copies, all the originals. So much so that I recommend really staying out of the folder, because if we mess with it and we accidentally delete something or we interrupt a path, Google Classroom will freak out a little bit. So I back all the way out until I get to probably my drive. And then I would actually click the forward button. And then I would tell it wherever I want it to live. And I would hit that blue move here button. And so that's how I can tell it where to live if I want to.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions today, guys? If you don't have any questions, thank you for joining me today. I hope you didn't hear all my kids yelling too loud because they were up there in the TV room. They're playing, I think they have a little tournament going on the Nintendo Switch. So I guess that's, a lot of us are balancing, you know, both kids at home and being here at work, and you guys are awesome for being here today. Again, if you need any help at all, if I'm your coach, I want to help you. If I'm not your coach wants to help you. And so let us know if you have any questions. That Google form, I will download our Zoom meeting and I'm going to put it in YouTube, and then I'll send you the link. Otherwise, thanks for joining me today. Enjoy that 3-day weekend. Find time to unplug, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Bye.